All right. Democracy. Let's tackle this argument, right? World-renowned geohound said that he was a recovering lefty, or a lefty that's waking up a little. So if there's any lefties in the chat, this is specifically for you. A question to you. But any right-winger could answer as well. But I'm really interested to hear if I'm looking at the situation correctly. Which party has been arguing about the importance of democracy and the other side being a threat to it? Do you think, type 1, if you think that the Democrats have been arguing democracy is very important and the Republicans are a threat to it and Trump's a threat? Or type 2, if you think that argument's being made primarily by Republicans saying Democrats are a threat to democracy? Which side has made that a key plank of their argument? So 1 is Democrats, 2 is Republicans. Yeah. There you go, John. I think that it's unambiguously been the Democrats. I don't think that's controversial to say. That it's been a core tenet of their approach to this election that their opponents are threats to democracy. That's been the argument. I'm not saying that no one's ever said that coming from the right, that no Trump supporters ever said it, that no Republican. I'm not saying that. But clearly, if you asked who is making this a central part of their plank of their strategy, it's clearly the Democrats. So when an action occurs that makes the Democrats seem anti-democratic, it is worth pointing that out. The problem is, what occurs when you point out these double standards is, oftentimes what happens is, the other side that you're criticizing will say, but you have the double standard. So let's rehash. We've already said that it's the Democrats that have been focused on this democracy issue. So let me take, for example, we were talking about Destiny. Let's take him, but it could be any left. Let's take Rachel Maddow, right? Rachel Maddow says, Trump's a threat to democracy. Trump's a threat to democracy. Trump's a threat to democracy. And then something occurs in the Democratic Party, and you're like, whoa, that's not very democratic. And she goes, oh, please, I don't want to hear you talk about democracy. You supported January 6th. Well, I wasn't the one talking about the importance of democracy. That was you. This is what's occurring right now with the Democratic Party. They have installed a candidate that got almost no votes from their voters. Now, the core idea of democracy is a government that works for the people. That the people have a voice, and the government listens to that and tries to operate with the interest of the people at the forefront of their decisions. The way that plays out, there are different forms of democracy, but a direct democracy would be each person gets an equal vote. Oftentimes that's what we think of when we think of democracy, a direct democracy. There are other forms of democracy. You could have a democratic republic, etc., etc. Not really interested in the semantics of it. Now, oftentimes what happens is we learn these buzzwords and we say them, but we forget, why are we defending it? So when someone defends democracy or talks about the importance of democracy, why? What is it exactly that they're talking about? Let me give you another example. Fascism. Okay. Fascism's bad. Okay, but what are we really saying? Well, when people say something's fascist, most of the time what they're saying is it's sort of corruptly authoritarian. That's the problem. So you can look at it, they'll use violence and intimidation to silence opponents. So when you look at an organization like Antifa and you say, hey, it seems that you're using fascist tactics. And they say, no, we call ourselves anti-fascist. And you're like, right, but the problem we all have with fascism is sort of the tactics that they employ. That's the problem. That's what we're criticizing. And it doesn't matter if you call it fascism, or if you call it authoritarianism, or you call it political violence, whatever you want to call it, you're doing it and it's bad. You might say, no. Our political violence, we don't call fascism. We call something else. Yeah, well, whatever. That's bad. That's what we don't like about fascism, and that's what we don't like that you're doing right now. Same thing. It's the same with democracy. It's like, you call yourself Democrats. Okay, good. 2 points. But what are we really saying? Why is democracy important? When they're shouting, you're going to end democracy, what are they saying? Well, they're saying that you will become an authoritarian that's not accountable to the people. That their vote will no longer matter. Now, have you heard anyone talk that you watch that's a streamer talk about people's vote not mattering? Have you ever heard someone saying that? Right, that's me. That's my entire argument of the current system we have. That it's ran by unelected bureaucrats, and so the average person's voice doesn't matter. Anti-democratic would be a way of saying that. Nonetheless, what the Democrats have done with their primary is, by very definition, anti-democratic. Because they did not give the voters of the party a voice. They didn't. Now, let's turn our hat around and steelman the position from the left. But Rob, they're a private organization. They could pick delegates any way they want. It's within their rules that they could do this. It's not their fault that Joe Biden had a medical condition and had to drop out. And most people now want Joe Biden to be gone. So this isn't anti-democratic. Au contraire, my friend, it is anti-democratic. Let me explain the reasons why. First off, depending on who you ask, when Biden signed his letter declaring he's not going to run, I did see some polling that said the majority of Democrats wanted him out. I saw other people pushing polling that said the majority of Democrats wanted him to remain. So how do you know which poll was accurate? We had a vote. Are you saying that the results of a vote can be overturned if polling suggests that sentiments have changed? That seems odd. Could the same be true of the general election? If Biden wins and 2 years in, people realize he's shit, like happened, and polling suggests that they don't like him anymore and want someone different, does that mean we redo the election? Of course not. Now, there are legal ramifications to that, but also morally you would say, no, that's not how it works. So that's number one. So there is no proof that the majority of Democrats wanted Biden out. It's not provable. There are polls going both ways on it. Number two, the reason that the majority of Democrats may want him out, or at least a large swath of Democrats, is because people that control the narrative have been pushing the narrative to get him out. That's why. For example, Joe Biden's mental health didn't significantly decline on the day of the debate. He'd been like that for a long, long time. But the people in the media and the people surrounding Joe Biden lied to the American people. And as such, the majority of Democrats wanted Joe Biden to be the candidate. It wasn't until they came out and said, oh, Joe Biden's shit, that then there was a change in public perception. In other words, it was anti-democratic because they put their thumb on the scale, on one hand intentionally subverting the truth in order to let people believe that Joe Biden was something he wasn't, mentally competent, which is in its way subverting democracy. And then secondly, once that became evident that it was going to hurt them in the general election, they went the other direction. That's not democratic. In other words, let's say for a second that the presidential race is going to be between me and Kamala Harris. And let's say that you could see in a crystal ball. And if we were given equal amounts of opportunity, so we each had the exact same money to spend, we each had the exact same coverage on every platform, the algorithms were completely equal, and let's say you could see into a crystal ball, and I would beat Kamala Harris 80% to 20% in the national vote. Absolutely destroy her. Okay? But then you see what would happen in reality, which I have no name recognition, no money. I would get blown out. Because no one knows who I am. Why? Because money and influence and power and connections matter. and they're able to tip the scales in the direction that they want. That's the system that we have now. There are criticisms with that system, many of which I agree with. But is it democratic? Is that a hallmark of democracy? I said this in 2020, when everyone was ranting and raving about Dominion voting machines, which you absolutely had the right to do. What did I say? I'm more concerned if they didn't cheat. Why? Because if they could drag a doddering old man with cognitive issues, who didn't even campaign the last 3 months of the election, across the finish line, who can't they drag? Basically, it's only going to get worse as technology increases, as algorithms become more important, as AI becomes more important. If Google could basically pick our president now, what's going to happen in the next 12 years? That's scarier to me than illegals' ballots being stuffed. That's not democratic. Superdelegates being able to pick your candidate, that's not democratic. It's not. The Democratic Party lied to their voters about Joe Biden's health for 4 years. They didn't give a shit. Then they lied to them and said, oh, we just found out. And they put pressure to get Joe Biden to quit. That's why Joe Biden's quitting. Not because he wanted to, but because he was forced out by powerful people. That's not democracy. Now, one more argument that they'll try to make. Well, but what if someone has a health condition? Shouldn't they go out? Or I saw Sitch making this argument. Oh, Republicans said that he's not competent enough to be president. And now that he's withdrawn, they say it's a coup. Well, that argument might hold up if they remove Joe Biden from the presidency. But that's not what they did. No one's called for that. If their argument was, oh shit, now we see this guy's not competent to be president, we're declaring he's unfit based on the 25th Amendment, that's different. Yes, when he's removed from office, then you obviously have to have a process to pick the next nominee. Totally makes sense. That's not what's occurred. Even if Joe Biden ends up resigning the presidency, that's not what occurred at the time that he declared that he wasn't running. He was forced out. That's what happened. Yes, it's true that Republicans said that they didn't want Joe Biden to run and be president because he's incompetent. The Democrats haven't capitulated to that. The Democrats said, okay, he can't win, so he shouldn't run, but he should still be president for the next 6 months. That's not democratic. The will of the voters of the Democratic Party do not matter. They don't matter. What matters is the donor class, the powerful people in the party who literally are picking and choosing who they want as the candidate. And by the way, that's what they did in 2016 and arguably in 2020 as well. In addition to that, the Democrats basically, when you brought up sort of that RFK got screwed over in the Democratic primary and it was basically just a coronation for Joe Biden, the argument that they almost all made was, hey man, that's his right as the incumbent. That's how it works, man. If you're the incumbent president and you want to run again, there's basically no primary. That's always the way it works. And yet, while they made that argument, we all know that Joe Biden was not mentally competent to be president. Just like he's not now. And the Democrats knew it. They absolutely knew it. Kamala Harris knew it. Nancy Pelosi knew it. The media knew it. And they lied. And so that means that they basically acquiesced to a system to disenfranchise the voters of the Democratic Party by not telling them the truth that they knew that Joe Biden's mental health had declined to the point where if it became public, the public would say, no, we don't want this man. And they kept it hidden. And then they basically destroyed the primary process, ensuring that Joe Biden would be the nominee. And now they've said, now Joe Biden, you got to go. We'll pick the nominee. And so you end up, seemingly it's going to be Kamala Harris, someone who couldn't even get one delegate to vote for her in the 2020 presidential primary. She doesn't have one vote for her. Completely installed by the system. Completely. Not one Democrat voter voting for her to be the nominee. Not one. Well, Sam, if he wants my help, I'm willing to help. I reached out, but that's why it's anti-democratic. And when the response is, but you don't think January 6th was an attack on democracy, that's irrelevant. You're the people that said that democracy is so important. That's your argument. You don't give a shit about democracy. Similarly, it took all of 20 minutes for them to go to age doesn't matter. I don't see evidence of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. It's not that important. Who cares anyways? His team's what's important. It took 20 minutes for Joe Biden to drop out and them to say, oh, Trump's too old. Trump's too old. They don't give a shit about the Trump's too old argument. But what they'll say is, but Rob, isn't that you doing the exact same thing? Just like you said, we didn't really care about democracy because we harped on it. And then when we did something that was seen as anti-democratic, that proves we didn't care about democracy. Doesn't that prove, Rob, when you said Joe Biden was old? Okay, now he's out and Trump's the old man, and the fact that you don't care about it, doesn't that prove hypocrisy? No, because the criticism of Joe Biden was never just his age. That was the straw man that the Democrats tried to make it about. Remember when you would say, I said it. They covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And the response I would get is, but here's a New York Times article for 2020 asking, is Joe Biden too old? Those aren't the same things. Yes, there are general questions about the age of candidates that get in to be septuagenarians. That's certainly a general criticism. The criticism of Joe Biden wasn't a 70-something-year-old man's not capable. It was, he's not capable. He has something going on. He has a medical issue. Not just he's old. That was never the criticism. That was the straw man that Democrats tried to make it about. People made fun of Trump's RNC speech because it was too long. Because a few days after an assassination attempt where his ear was shot, the guy had so much energy he couldn't shut the fuck up. That's the direct opposite of Joe Biden. Then I saw Counterpoint said to someone, someone was like, what about Biden's mental decline? He said, do you think Trump has any signs of cognitive decline? Another disingenuous framing of the question of what's going on. Quite literally, is Trump showing signs of cognitive decline? Probably, yes. I'm showing signs of cognitive decline. Anyone over the age of 40, for example, one of the hobbies that I have is watching chess. I enjoy watching people play chess. This might shock you if you're not that familiar with chess, because you might say, well, it's not like gymnastics where clearly your body has a peak physical performance and then once you turn a certain age, you just start to lose it. The same's true of your mental abilities when it comes to chess. As players get older, and I'm not talking like 90, I'm talking like 40s, 50s, 60s, their ability significantly declines. Now, you can still hold a conversation with these people. They're not like Joe Biden. Well, yes, you could say their abilities in the game of chess have declined. All of us have slight cognitive declines. So the framing of the question is disingenuous because while it is technically true, that anyone as they get older experience some form of cognitive decline. Again, I go back to my baseball example. I play a little. I'm not very good. I'm ranked about 1,200. I go back to the baseball example. Let's say you have two batters playing for the same team, and both of them are all-stars. And then the next year, one of them, they were both batting 300. They both hit 30 home runs. Pretty good. Both all-stars. And then the next year, the first guy only bats 250 and hits 25 home runs. You'd say, did he have decline? Yeah, he had decline. Absolutely true. And then the other guy never takes an at-bat because he goes out and shits his pants and rolls in the fetal position. And when we would say, whoo, that guy can't be a Major League Baseball player, Connor's argument would be, but didn't that other guy have decline too? Didn't he have decline too? He used to hit 30 home runs. Now he only hit 25. So that's decline too. Can you admit that? Yeah, I guess. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? It's not that Joe Biden has a slight amount of mental decline. It is that it's been evident since 2020 that he wasn't the politician he was in 2016 and had significant problems, which is why he was being hidden. And that's became worse as the years have gone on. To the point where the dude just announced via a fucking tweet on X that he's not running, even though was the presumptive nominee. He can't give a speech. He's teleprompters everywhere. The Wall Street Journal just put out an article today that said, way back in October of 2021, he was meeting with like a bunch of Democrat cabinet, and things went off the rail then. In October of 2021, and they were like, what the fuck? In October of 2021, all of them knew it. They all knew. So the argument like, yeah, but do you think Trump's the exact same guy as he was in 2016? No. But he's not a vegetable. 2024 Trump is leagues cognitively ahead of 2020 Biden. Now, you might say, but I think Trump's an unhinged maniac and this, that. That's fine. Those are criticisms that you could have made 2016, 2020, and 2024. Those are questions of his temperament, of his honesty. Those are fine. We can talk about that stuff. But that's not his cognitive abilities.